I like people to know that your loved one is not your loved one. And I don't know to what degree they're not themselves, because I don't know with the listeners how far your loved one's addiction has progressed. But what we know about addiction is it's complex, it's widely misunderstood, and it's progressive. It gets worse over time. Even when we're sober, it's progressing in the background. And so they're not themselves as it progresses. They become less and less. The way I look at it is we have maybe just imagine this full glass of water, and then when we're really struggling, it's just this very low, if not empty glass of water. And they're disappearing as the disease takes over. Your loved one's essence is disappearing. I was lying to my kids, who were teenagers at the time, and I was acutely aware that I was lying to them and manipulating them to drink, but I was feeling bad for doing it and not sure why I was. I was super confused.
Is something standing between you and your happiness? It was for me. I had to face my depression and the constant negative self-talk. Therapy helped me realize I deserve to be happy. That's why this podcast is called I Choose Health, because I made the choice to heal, and I want to share that with you. It's Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. 60% of you who are watching this podcast are men. And brothers, it is time to take care of yourself. As a gift to you, we've partnered with BetterHelp as our sponsor to help you start your own healing journey. We all face moments when life feels overwhelming, whether it's stress, anxiety, or just feeling stuck. Talking to someone can make a real difference. And that's where our sponsor BetterHelp comes in. BetterHelp offers professional online therapy that's convenient, affordable, and entirely on your schedule. You can connect with a licensed therapist by video, phone, or even chat, whatever works best for you. Let our sponsor BetterHelp support you on your journey to better mental health. You can get 10% off your first month by going to betterhelp.com/iChooseHealth. That's betterhelp.com/iChooseHealth for 10% off your first month. Take the first step toward feeling better today. Welcome back to the I Choose Health podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Leslie. We all know someone who suffered with addiction, or we may also be suffering addiction ourselves. And today, our guest is someone who's a family addiction expert and a catalyst for change, who's been inspiring recovery and healing since she got sober herself back in 2013. After facing and overcoming her own battle with substance abuse, she saw and felt the missing pieces at a recovery initiative tipping point. She has since made it her life's mission to bring families into the recovery conversation. Through hundreds of interventions, she has created a proven family recovery model where families are empowered to rise above the frequency of addiction. When families heal, their loved ones can as well. She founded the Tipping Point Recovery Incorporated and created the Dear Family Framework. Kate Duffy, welcome to the I Choose Health podcast.
Thanks, Stefan. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm definitely happy to have you here. And as we shared this prior to the discussion, we've had people on the podcast who have themselves suffered addiction, but we haven't had anyone who's been on both sides of it, both suffering with addiction and also working as an expert to help people in that area. So beyond the obvious of, going through yourself and wanting to help others, what made you start the Tipping Point Recovery?
Well, it started when I was drinking, but I didn't know it, right? It's looking back that the seed was planted. I was lying to my kids, who were teenagers at the time, and I was acutely aware that I was lying to them and manipulating them to drink, but I was feeling bad for doing it and not sure why I was. I was super confused. But I remember, my children are everything to me. And here I was like an enemy and a distant stranger hurting them. And so that just stayed with me. And when I got sober and started to work in the field, I think I probably had this lens I was looking through, watching out for families because I felt bad for my kids. When I started to get sober, I was taught in treatment and in meetings that I had a thinking disorder, a mental health disorder that I was trying to solve with alcohol, and that I wasn't bad or wrong. My brain was hijacked. And so when I learned about what was really going on from me, which wasn't what I thought I was just a horrible person for becoming who I was, When I learned that, I thought, why didn't we know that? Why didn't my kids know that? Why didn't someone tell my kids what was going on, protect them from me, actually, in my addiction? And so that was another lens I started looking through. And it was ultimately a job I took doing overdose intervention at an emergency room for 2 years. I was on call with the police department. And going into the ER, I watched the doctors, the police and fire, and the families were all kind of in the dark, buying the story when someone says, I'm good, I don't need help. That's not true. We don't tell the truth when we're drinking. And so I thought, why are we still in that same treating people with what they say is going on? And I don't mean to say the opposite of that is to just ignore the person's needs or wants, but I came to the family work because families need to be empowered. Families deserve to know the truth about addiction. Maybe it's not about your loved one's situation, because medically I may not be able to disclose information about your loved one, but you should learn about addiction, because when you understand what's happening to your person, it helps inform you and you can respond differently. So it was by mistake, honestly, Stefan. And I think those seeds I described earlier, those lenses I was looking through, made me super passionate about it once I recognized the power of educating families about, kind of from behind the curtain as an alcoholic. And I started a support group. This was back in 2015. And all I did was educate the families, mainly from my own story. So they would say to me, she lies. She's so manipulative. He stole. And I would say, I stole. I lied. I manipulated. I was wanting people to change their perspective from my loved one is doing this to we all do this. And their fears would minimize, their anxiety would minimize a little bit. And what happened is they could start to take different action. And we noticed that more people were getting sober when their family was able to kind of come to the table, informed and educated and honestly empowered to not only deal with their own stuff, but to learn why their loved one was doing what they were doing. This is short as I can make the story, but I saw the results of teaching families these. And the framework that you described in my intro was developed over these 2 years by just talking to families. One of the moms handed me her notebook after 2 years, and she said, I wrote down everything you said. And from that notebook, we created my book and programs to empower families to stop the chaos.
That's
yeah,
amazing.
Yeah.
So, Kate, when someone we love is in active addiction, it's easy to feel like we're dealing with them. But you say we're actually dealing with the addiction. Can you unpack what that really means?
Yeah, I like people to know that your loved one is not your loved one. And I don't know to what degree they're not themselves, because I don't know with the listeners how far your loved one's addiction has progressed. But what we know about addiction is it's complex, it's widely misunderstood, and it's progressive. It gets worse over time. Even when we're sober, it's progressing in the background. And so they're not themselves as it progresses. They become less and less. The way I look at it is we have maybe just imagine this full glass of water, and then when we're really struggling, it's just this very low, if not empty glass of water. And they're disappearing as the disease takes over. Your loved one's essence is disappearing. That's why they become completely different people. I think of the addiction as like a frequency or a vibe, if you want, right? It's like an energy, and it's dark, right? It's nasty, it's mean, it's compartmentalizing, it's fear-based, it's blaming, it denies, it minimizes. And even if those are the qualities of your loved one prior to them being on the spectrum with addiction, it's not who they are at their core, right? At our core, because I was literally a shell. And when I was being mean to my family members, it wasn't me. It wasn't the me they knew. It wasn't the me that I could become. So I like families to think about, you're talking to the addiction. If they're being irrational, blaming, compartmentalizing, denying, minimizing, you want to not talk to that. I'll talk with you when you're sober, or I'll talk with you when it can make sense, because their brain's hijacked. So if you're trying to rationalize with someone who's not thinking about you, they're thinking about you getting you out of the way so they can get to what they need to get to. And yeah, that's really the first important lesson is stop trying to engage with what can't be rationalized with.
Correct. And, I think what you're sharing here is really empowering because I think about 2-3 weeks ago, we had Adam Sudd on the podcast, and he talks about how he dealt with his addiction. And one thing that was really powerful, he stated that one needs to be present for their recovery. One needs to be fully themselves to really deal with the reality of what's overtaken them. So just stating it in that way, I think is really powerful and impactful. Not just for the person that's suffering with the addiction, but also for the families that, that makes it a little bit easier for them to understand how to approach the situation and that person.
Right. And so we need to be ourselves, to be present with ourselves when we're working on getting better. So let's unpack that for a minute. At the end of my addiction, there was almost nothing left of me. And so when I was told I needed to be present with myself, which is absolutely true, there was a smidgen. And my family members were distant from me because they were so hurt and mad. And so there was two very unpresent people, right? And so you're absolutely right. We have to start somewhere. And what I say to family members when they say, well, there's nothing I can do if he doesn't want to get sober or she doesn't want to get sober, I say, start getting present yourself first. I agree with you fully and your guest. Start to get present with yourself first, and then you can find that presence in them. That's literally how I teach people. I first want people to disconnect for a minute, long enough to be able to reduce your anxiety or your anger. Work on yourself for a little bit. Maybe it's hours, maybe it's weeks for certain people. And once you start to come back together by understanding them and understanding yourself, then you can start to find that place in them. That's just what you're talking about, Stefan, that presence in them. So think about presence as like your essence or, right, your who you are, your soul. You can find that in anyone, even the sickest. Because if there's breath, there's hope. And if you can find that presence in them and connect to that, you can start to feed that and disconnect from the addicted part. You can start to rebuild. It's slow. It's not a quick fix, but it can be rebuilt. Yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah. And a lot of families feel guilty or ashamed, especially if they've been enabling. What would you say to someone who's stuck in that guilt cycle?
The first thing I want people to know, and if you're listening, you're either someone that has been told you're enabling, or you're someone that tells another family member, you just need to stop enabling. So there's both players that are probably present. And first thing I want to say is enabling is how we learn to love. It's not wrong. It's trying to help. And what doesn't work is to say you need to stop enabling to yourself or to someone else, because that's just like saying just stop drinking. We don't just stop these really big things that we've become habitual in doing, right? So enabling is loving someone by doing for them. It's just one of my definitions. And how to stop doing that is to first understand why you did do it. Have compassion for yourself. You're not going to get anywhere if you just try to cut out a habit. You know this from your work, helping people be healthy. It needs to start with compassion, with self-compassion. So I like people to say, yes, I enable and I do it because it helps me feel a sense of control, or I do it because it helps me feel safe. What is the reason? Or I don't know any other way. And then I tell people, make a commitment. Decide today's your sobriety date. I want you to get emotionally sober from addiction. And just say, I'm going to learn to love in a new way. I'm going to learn healthy support. That's really the first step. The second step for me would be, once you've established this compassion for yourself, you understand it as a habit, I think the next step would be list out the ways, this might sting a little, list out the ways that your enabling has actually been perpetuating the problem. And one of the ways to do that is to talk to a person who's recovering and ask them, I'm supporting my loved one in this way. Is that enabling? Because we'll tell you the truth. Once we're sober, when we're drinking, we won't tell you the truth. Right. Once we're sober, we'll say, yes, that's enabling. I don't make a list for people. I really like people to find their own list, the ways we support people, because it's not as simple as not giving someone money. It might be as nuanced as feeding someone who then you make comfortable to continue to use. So I'm not suggesting don't feed them, That's what I mean. It's very nuanced. I'm not suggesting people just quickly kick someone out of the house. We need to understand what they need for help, how to get it for them, and then invite them to that conversation versus tossing them. I don't think that works either. But that enabling thing is a really big word. The biggest issue I have with it is we don't just stop it. We have to learn and unlearn in order to stop.
So if I'm understanding what you're saying correctly, and it's something that sounds really insightful, is that addiction is not so much a self-abusive behavior, but it's more so a way of healing that individual thinks is the healthiest way to deal with whatever it is they're going through with. But they're thinking that going through that addiction, whether that's drinking or smoking, is a way that they're healing themselves. I mean, if I'm understanding that correctly, just unpack that a little bit more as well. Welcome to week 12 of 52 Choices, where tiny habits create massive change. This week's choice is to prep grab-and-go healthy snacks. Think a handful of almonds, an apple, or a small container of vegan Greek yogurt. Why? Because decision fatigue is real. By the time you're hungry, you're more likely to reach for chips or candy if there's nothing else ready. A 2016 study in health psychology found that people who plan their snacks in advance were more likely to stick to their nutrition goals and less likely to binge later in the day. Nuts provide healthy fats and protein to keep you full. Fruit gives you natural sugars and fiber. Yogurt adds probiotics for gut health and extra protein for balance. So here's the challenge. Set aside 10 minutes this week to prep 3 snack packs. That's it. Keep them in your bag, fridge, or car so when hunger hits, you're ready. Prep now, snack smart later, make health personal, make a choice to be you.
I don't believe I believe it is abuse. It is self-abuse. I do think that I was drinking more to heal myself. It wasn't healing myself. It wasn't working, but it's funny. I was really spiritually seeking when I was drinking more, and it wasn't helpful for me to keep drinking. The spiritual development is blocked when you're abusing substances. So I think that it's a self-love journey. I had zero sense of self-worth at the end of my drinking. It's hard to be harming yourself and have any sense of self-worth. So I do think that maybe people think they're healing themselves, but it's mostly self-destruction.
And for, just shifting gears for a second, in terms of the way that families can support, what are some small but powerful first steps that a family member can take to begin shifting the dynamic, especially if their loved one doesn't want help as yet?
Well, in my book, I outline 3 core ways, and it's going to sound really simple. It will sound like you already know it, but there's so many layers to each component. The first one is understand your loved one. Understand the reasons they drink. Understand what the drinking and drugging does for them. We know what it does to them, but what is it doing for them? How is it helping them? That helps you understand what's going on underneath. Understand what recovery looks like. So this is still the first component, but there's a lot. What does it take to recover? How do you know when someone's recovering? How do you support someone who wants recovery? How do you support someone who doesn't? So as you can see, there's a lot there, and there's even more. The second component is, as you're understanding them, I want people to understand themselves, which is, what am I doing unknowingly that is contributing to the problem? How am I feeling about what they're doing, and what do I do with my feelings? Am I throwing them on them because I'm so mad or hurt, or am I managing and processing them on my own? Am I taking care of myself? Have I completely lost myself because of someone's addiction? Addiction's contagious, and it's nasty, and it oozes on us if you're nearby, right? So first component is understand them. Second is understand yourself. And have a plan. Work on yourself. Process your own feelings about it. Don't shove them down. Don't hide them, but they're yours. They're not someone else's. And then the third component is, I want people to see 2 paths, 2 roads, your road and your loved one's road. And you can walk alongside of them, working on yourself while you're understanding them. And this framework, as simple as it sounds, can take a year or 2 to really process. And the results of it are, our loved ones are actually having a better chance at finding recovery because we, as family, get out of the way. We allow them their experience and their consequences. We're not trying to rescue them from their disease. We're trying to support them, but support them conditionally. Because you don't want to support the addiction. You want to support the person's recovery. And what do we do when they don't want recovery? So it's complex. But those are the things to, and people start in different places. When they come to tipping point recovery, they start on themselves, if that's what's primary for them, or they start on, I've got to get my loved one to treatment, and we might intervene. So it kind of depends on the person. You can work on both at the same time, or you can work on one person first.
Right. As you were breaking down the framework, just explain more extensively how the framework helps the person with the addiction.
Yeah. So it's a family disease, and this is it's not black and white. It's very nuanced, right? So I'm going to just speak in general. In my situation, let me use that as an example. My parents were helping me pay my rent because I was divorced and I had a new job and I was in sales and I wasn't making a lot of money. Well, the main reason I wasn't making a lot of money is I was drinking a lot and I was hiding it from them. And they were paying my rent to help me because I needed help and I was newly divorced. But I was taking advantage of that. So if they were to learn that help was actually not helping me, and they were to stop paying my rent, I would have been faced with the consequences of my addiction, which might have caused me sooner to stop, to seek help, right? Because I would have been, so it was my family rescued me a lot. So that's one way that families inadvertently can support the problem to continue. And when they stopped doing that, I hit a bottom faster, and it contributed to me thinking, I can't keep doing this. I'm going to die. So it's kind of like they gave me bandwidth to start to feel the effects of my addiction rather than have a pillow be underneath it. They didn't know the truth because I was really good at hiding it. Another way families and I'll tell you, your listeners will already know if they're doing it. Here's what people have told me they're doing. Paying for cars when they're totaled. Someone said to me the other day, well, I need to make sure he doesn't get arrested because that'll go on his record and he'll never get another job. And what's happening there is someone's trying to prevent someone from having a bad time. It's what we do when we love people. But if we're preventing life situations and altering our own life, the person's not being held accountable, they're not needing to experience a bottom, they can just continue to spiral. So that's how we sort of contribute to the... There are so many ways, actually, that it happens, that we contribute. And once I started to discover that, I realized as a family member, wow, I want to be darn sure I'm not doing anything that's contributing to anyone I love. So it's quite nuanced work, right? It's very, people get very entangled. What's help? And what's not help. It's not black and white. Yeah, it's not black and white.
Yeah. And that's really helpful. For those of us who have kids, we know that there's certain things that we do have to allow kids to understand and see the consequences of their behavior for them to realize that they need to make a change. And those are things that we're able to help our kids identify very early on. So when we're dealing with our loved ones who are going through the addiction, especially since they're a little bit older, we definitely need to allow them to use their perception and their senses to see, how the reality of how their addiction is causing further problems in their life.
It's really great to look at parenting as an example. You just brought me back to when my kids were really young. I was in degree in early childhood, and I had a nursery school in my 20s. And one of the things we were always taught as teachers of young children is when a 3-year-old spills milk, you hand them a cloth, right? And so think about it. Anybody can really assess themselves. Are you the kind of parent or a family member that when someone spills, do you run and clean it up? Or do you hand them a cloth, matter-of-factly, or a dustpan if they break, a cookie or something? And so if you are running and cleaning up, and maybe you've been doing this for someone their whole life, it's just good to take a look and say, am I helping them? Or am I helping myself feel comfortable? But yeah, how we parent really young prior to even any substances is cool to look at. It's cool to look at. Yeah.
And I'm currently going through that. My little one is about to be 2 this year. So I'm definitely seeing where there are times I'm just looking to get over the situation and deal with the comfort. And then I start to think, okay, what do I want her to learn?
Exactly.
Right. And so if I continue to clean up after her, she's not going to learn the consequences of her actions.
No, and it's so matter of fact. I literally remember being in college and we were student teaching and some child had smashed a cracker on the floor and there was no punitive, no, why did you do that? It was just matter of fact, here's the dustpan. And I think that analogy can go toward any part of parenting. Like, what's the dustpan in the situation? And how do you, and it was just like, yeah, it's a really great age. I love that age so much, Stefan.
Yeah. And in terms of the framework, what outcomes have you seen as a result of using this framework with families?
So families come in to our program with their loved ones at all stages of addiction. Mainly, it's a last stop here for a lot of people. I wish it wasn't the case, but a lot of times people have been in and out of treatment many, many, many times. And if I'm not intervening on the loved one, the outcomes, I would say within weeks to months, the family member who comes into the program, who's working on themselves, watching our trainings and in our live calls, they're making changes. So it's like this dance. Often things start to change just as a result of the family member making the change because they start to identify the ways that they're entangled. They start to take better care of themselves. They're very loving and very compassionate. So if there was arguing before, there's less arguing. So it sounds like I've got to get to my recovery meeting. This is hard. They're talking about their own recoveries. A lot of people, spouses or children of alcoholics, might be listening to our groups and they're curious. So in the beginning, in the first couple of months, often people are saying, my loved one's noticing. I'm changing. Instead of saying, I'm not going to help you, I'm choosing ways to support you that are going to foster recovery. So we're giving people language to use. Often within the first couple of months, people are starting to change. Not all the time. I would say about 20% of the time, people need additional help. They need some form of intervention. And we have a team of expert interventionists. And many families decide to stay in the program long term, and they're here for a year. And everything changes for them. So outcomes, traditionally, if we don't recover the family, they say about 20% of people actually recover, which is really grim. I'm not sure if that's accurate, but it's pretty low because mostly we're waiting for a person with a disease that lacks willingness and lacks honesty to do things like get willing and be honest. It's not going to happen. It doesn't happen for most people. In our program, we see more like an 80% success rate for people because the family's getting better. And what we tell families is 100% you'll get better and you'll know what to do and you'll know how to navigate twists and turns of addiction and you'll feel better. You'll get your peace back. You'll get your life back. You'll get your time back. Whether or not the person they love recovers as a result of those changes, still pretty high. So I say, anything even over 50%. And we're seeing, 75 to 80% of people long-term are staying sober.
That's amazing.
It is amazing.
That's amazing.
It's hard work. It's really hard work for the family. What I'm asking of families is really hard. But the way we look at it is loving someone with addiction is even harder. So choose your heart, right?
Yeah, definitely. Choose your heart. And what about the cases where the family's loved one does not want to change? How does a framework work then?
So most people, when they come here, their loved one doesn't want to change. I would say 98% of the people that enroll in our program, their loved one doesn't want to change. And that's where it's the biggest challenge to help families still work on themselves. Because even though someone doesn't want to change, what do they need? They need to change. And what do you want as the family member? That's what I say. And I don't mean any disrespect to the person struggling listening, but I say, I care less about what you want. I care more about what you need. And I care about what your family needs. And so most of them don't want the help. And I think that that's less about that they really don't want the help and more about the disease itself. I think the disease prevents help. So anyway, to answer your question, after family members start to create change for themselves, there are still probably 25% of the people that aren't getting help, refusing help. And those are a higher level of service, a higher level of our team leaning in on the family system. And what we do is we intervene, but we create bigger change in the family system so that the willingness increases. One of our interventionists used the term manufacturing willingness in people is what we do. It's very interesting. And it's impossible to describe how we do it because it's so different in every case. But you can rearrange a family system enough that want can increase.
So we know that you help families who are needing to be helped with the recovery of a loved one. Are there specific services that the Tipping Point Recovery offers to families? Like, are there very specific things or steps that you guys take with families?
Yes, and it starts with as small as my book. The next step would be video training library, which people have lifetime access to, incredibly life-changing videos. And the next step, which is really the most common place for people to come in, is our 8-week program, which is a combination of video trainings and live meetings. So meeting with the intervention team so we can actually be with you live and assess your situation. We call that Stop the Chaos Boot Camp. And it's an 8-week intensive for families. It's all held over Zoom with 3 live calls a week. So I call it treatment for family. It's like addiction treatment for family members. Yeah, that's usually where most people start.
And what would you say in terms of your services make them so effective at helping a family's loved one find recovery?
Because honestly, Stefan, for 10 years, I have been working with families and I don't like to take no for an answer. I tirelessly have become a studier, a student of watching families put up with, watching families hurt. And I don't know, very intuitively, the connection between a group of people and myself and my team, we are constantly creating new materials, creating new videos. We're watching families and literally building the plane while we fly it. These programs have been designed with the group in the room at the table. Like I mentioned, that woman handed me her book. So it's very much a co-creation. That's why I think it's so effective, because we're listening. Like I just created a disarming statement guide with probably 40 things you can say to your loved one when they need to be disarmed instead of engaging in the fight. And it came from them. It came from me listening to the client's needs. We built something for them. It's built to order. Yeah, it feels like a custom build as I'm describing it to you.
And I know that you've worked with thousands of families. Is there a specific story that really sticks out to you? A particular family that you helped has just really impacted you and just impacted other families as well to really seek out recovery?
To be honest with you, if it wasn't as effective as it was, I probably wouldn't still be doing it because it's really hard. And it's so much to hold when you listen to what families are going through. It's heartbreaking. When you asked me that question, a few families flashed before my eyes. And every day I get emails or text messages with people talking about the changes. One that stands out would be a woman named Jennifer, who's in recovery herself, 30 plus years. And her son was literally dying in his room, getting smaller and smaller, and long hair, and not eating, and mental health primary, substance use secondary. And it took her a bit being in our program, and her mother joined our program, and we ended up intervening on her son, and he's thriving, and his treatment program calls him a miracle boy. And she was in recovery, so she made the mistake of thinking she should know. Because a lot of us in recovery think, well, we must know how to help. We don't know how to help our loved ones because we're emotionally compromised, and that was a pretty wild. I remember the day Jennifer told me I was singing in the car today, and I haven't done that in 10 years, and she was crying.
Wow.
Yeah, so really, people get their breath back. It's really powerful.
Well, Kate, thank you so much for sharing that with us. Thank you for sharing your time, your vulnerabilities, and your expertise. Kate, this is where we give the guests the opportunity to just share with the audience where they can find you and find your resources if they're also in need of help.
Sure. So my book, Dear Family by Kate Duffy, and I am on YouTube and TikTok. The website is tippingpointrecovery.com. Great place to start. We have a pretty active Facebook group called Friends of Tipping Point, Family Recovery with Kate on TikTok. So wherever you are, find us, and please feel free to reach out. Happy to talk with anyone that needs direction.
Kate, thank you again so much. And everything that you shared today, I think is really empowering. And for those of you who are watching, if whatever you've heard today has really empowered you and it's made you feel like you're ready to help that loved one, be sure to subscribe to our channel. Many of you are listening to the channel, watching the videos and enjoying it, but still 98% of you are not subscribed. So be sure to hit subscribe and then also hit the notification bell so that you can be notified anytime we put out a new video and a new episode. Again, this is the I Choose Health podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Leslie. And just remember that whenever you choose health, you're choosing power, possibility, and purpose. And when you're choosing health, you're also choosing you.